Honestly, it came down to Sherlock Holmes and Scooby-Doo.
I'm a cop car, baby.
I'm a cop car, baby.
And I'm cruising on down that line.
And I'm cruising on down the line.
And you better get out of my way now.
Hey, you better get out of my way now.
I always loved a good mystery. Growing up, I loved to watch Scooby-Doo and see how Scooby-Doo and the gang used to help folks and solve those mysteries. And I also was really into Sherlock Holmes stories and movies and shows. And it was really all about solving the mystery. I started off as a patrol officer, learning the foundations of police work. And then I was assigned as the school resource officer for a year, where I was assigned to the Dover High School, and I also taught a DARE class for a year. And then luckily I was assigned to detectives for most of my career. I spent 19 of my 23 years assigned as a detective. Specifically, I was the crime scene detective. I was the team leader of our crime scene unit, and I was also the evidence management officer. A lot of the cases I was involved in as an investigator were tragic. Despite the tragedy, however, my job was to help figure out who did this to those victims. So I certainly have a couple of sort of the whodunits cases in my career where it was very satisfactory to help solve the case through physical evidence. One case that comes to mind, during this manhunt, the pressure that was starting to form in this man's life caused it so that he came to us, actually. With all the things that was out in the news with his composite sketch and vehicle description, his coworkers were starting to look at him like, you kind of match that. So that pressure steered him to get an attorney and come to us. And his attorney said, here he is, we're presenting him to you, but he's not going to answer any questions. So I remember sitting there with him in the front cubicle of the Dover Police Department, and I was asked to just sit there with him. I wasn't allowed to ask him any questions, while his attorney had a little meeting with the chiefs and my bosses at the time. And as I'm sitting there in the cubicle, this guy decides to just relax in his chair and cross his legs, and I see the bottom of his shoe. And I immediately recognized the pattern because I had lifted about 30 of those impressions throughout that victim's house. So those moments, those aha moments with that physical evidence meant a lot to me because it meant we're on the right track, and not only are we on the right track, but I can prove it. In 2022, I was becoming eligible for retirement, and Director Skippa from Police Standards and Training invited me to apply to a position at Police Standards and Training to bring instruction related to crime scene investigations and criminal investigations back, because it was something that hadn't been offered for quite some time. But I was really fortunate that I was given the opportunity to stay in law enforcement and give back to the younger officers by sharing my knowledge and my experience and passing it back on to them, so that hopefully they can learn from what I did right and what I did wrong, and give them proper instruction so that they can do a good job in their field. I was fortunate enough to wind up serving the community I was born in. I grew up in Dover, and then I was lucky enough to then become a police officer in the same town I grew up. So I already had a sort of a commitment to that community that I wanted to make sure I could do my part to keep it safe and keep it a good place to live. After being a police officer for a while, I realized that you start to see the other side of your community that most people don't ever see. We see the goods and the bads of everybody. And it kind of also reminds you that people aren't good or bad. People make good decisions and people make bad decisions. Some people have bad weeks. Some people have good weeks. Has it changed my view of my community? No, if anything, it's given me a better appreciation of who we are as humans, to make sure that we all treat each other with respect and not judge too harshly if you're having a bad day or a bad week. But everyone deserves respect, regardless of the type of day they're having. So it's up to us as law enforcement to represent our profession well and be respectful to the people we interact with.